Hi, my name is Monica Cruz. I'm a career advisor at the UCR Career Center. In this video recording, I'll be going over how to ace your next interview. So in this video recording, the things that we'll be going over are preparing for the interview, practicing some commonly asked questions, what to do during and after the interview, as well as any other questions that might come up. I think that the question at the bottom, so what story do you want to tell? I think that this is a good way to frame your interview experience and the preparation for that as well. It's not about, being drilled about different questions about your previous experiences and what you can do for the company. I think in the preparation process as well as the interview process, think about the story that you want to tell the employer. By the end of this workshop, you'll be able to explain what is important when preparing for an interview, identify different types of interviews, commonly asked questions, and how to answer them effectively, as well as to understand your role in the interview process and how to navigate that. So before the interview, during, and after as well. And at the bottom, we have our NACE career competencies. So we have professionalism and work ethic, how to portray yourself professionally in the interview process. So being punctual and also communicating aspects of professionalism in your interviews. So how do you work productively with others, your time management, and also understanding the impact of nonverbal communication on your work image, which is vital to this having a successful interview. Next, we have critical thinking. So your ability to assess your background and experiences and being able to apply them to an interview and the needs of the employer and the position. So this is kind of examining how your previous behaviors and your previous successes, how that relates to this position, and how kind of drawing that line for the employer, how your previous experience can dictate your future success. Then we have oral and written communication. So interviewing is really all about storytelling. How do you communicate your story to others to tell the skills and experiences that make you a fit for the company and the position? This is all crucial to having a successful interview. And lastly, we have career management, which is really a combination of these things. So being able to translate your skills and abilities as they relate to the position, company, and industry to land your next opportunity. So the purpose, or I should say the purposes of an interview are to, 1, market yourself, 2, find out more about the organization, and I would say also about the position that you're applying to, as well as to determine whether this is a good fit for you and the employer. So it's not a one-sided conversation where the employer is just asking you question after question. It's an opportunity for you to interview the organization or company as well, to learn more about them, to determine whether it is a good fit for you too. Establishing a strong first impression is important when you're interviewing or seeking your next opportunity, and this starts even before you start the interview process. So this can start when you meet a recruiter at a career fair, or you do networking with a professional in the company or organization that you're hoping to get into. It can also include your email correspondence, so that first initial email, making sure that it is grammatically correct, you're using a professional email, as well as your application materials, and if there is a phone call or a phone interview or screening prior to that first face-to-face interview, whether it's virtual or in person, all of these things can include, that first impression before you meet the employer for the first time. Once you are invited for an interview, smile, even if it's over the phone. Smiling can kind of lift your tone while you're speaking and make you sound more excited and enthusiastic. Check your schedule and respond promptly, and be courteous of the employer and their schedule as well. If you will be attending an in-person interview, make sure that you verify the time and the location of your interview, and schedule your interview, if possible, for a time of day when you're most energized. And don't try to squeeze an interview between other commitments. You don't want to be late to your interview, and you don't want to show up to your next commitment after the interview feeling, drained, or maybe upset if it didn't go the way that you wanted it to. So try to keep your schedule kind of open if possible on the day that you have an interview. When you're informed that you have secured an interview with the employer, ask for clarification. So some questions that might be good to ask are if this is going to be a group or panel interview or individual interview, who are the people that you'll be meeting with, if you need to prepare anything in advance, such as a presentation for the interview. These are all really great questions that the employer would be happy to answer. They're not trying to make it as secretive as possible. They want to help you and give you as much information that you might need to be prepared. And once you have addressed these questions, this is your opportunity to do some research, especially if you are meeting with several individuals. You can look them up on LinkedIn and know what their roles are, know more about them, so that you can be more intentional with the questions that you're asking on your end of the interview. Other logistics with virtual interviews. So we talked a little bit about finding a space that is quiet and where you won't be interrupted, but also keeping in mind your internet connection is very important. Make sure that you're not in a part of the house or building that is known for having a weak or unstable internet connection. If you are not familiar with the platform that you will be using, try to practice with it beforehand. And once you have secured the link and the platform that you'll be using for the interview, try to access it as soon as possible. So don't wait until right at 2 p.m. when your interview is to access that link. Try to get on there maybe like 5 minutes before, as you would do with an in-person interview. You don't want to be there too early either, just to make sure that everything is working okay, and if you need to familiarize yourself with maybe different features on the interview platform. Dress the part. So even though it'll be a virtual interview, I would recommend dressing professionally from head to toe, just to keep yourself in that mindset of being professional. And ask for clarification if needed. So verifying what the conferencing system you'll be using, what time zone the interview will take place, and if you need to prepare any additional interviews or any additional materials for the interview. Other logistics with virtual interviews. So we talked a little bit about finding a space that is quiet and where you won't be interrupted, but also keeping in mind your internet connection is very important. Make sure that you're not in a part of the house or building that is known for having a weak or unstable internet connection. If you are not familiar with the platform that you will be using, try to practice with it beforehand. And once you have secured the link and the platform that you'll be using for the interview, try to access it as soon as possible. So don't wait until right at 2 p.m. when your interview is to access that link. Try to get on there maybe like 5 minutes before, as you would do with an in-person interview. You don't want to be there too early either, just to make sure that everything is working okay, and if you need to familiarize yourself with maybe different features on the interview platform. Dress the part. So even though it'll be a virtual interview, I would recommend dressing professionally from head to toe, just to keep yourself in that mindset of being professional. And ask for clarification if needed, so verifying what the conferencing system you'll be using, what time zone the interview will take place, and if you need to prepare any additional interviews or any additional materials for the interview. For interviews where you might be going out for a meal with the employer, follow the interviewer's lead. Maintain conversation. It may tend a little bit, or it may lean a little bit more to the personal because you are having a meal with the employer, but it's okay to open up as long as you still keep it professional and don't talk about topics that are sensitive, like maybe politics and religion, for example. Follow etiquette rules. We have a couple of resources on our website for dining etiquette that you can refer to, and there's also a series of YouTube videos, not hosted through the Career Center, but I think if you type in like dining interview etiquette or something, it should come up. It is a little bit less of a formal environment, so that's why the topics might be a little bit more personal, but it's so important to keep it as professional as possible. These are some considerations for portraying yourself in a professional manner for an in-person or virtual interview. So adopting a dark or muted color palette in terms of your professional attire, maybe avoiding heavy perfume or cologne, having clean hands and nails. If you need any professional attire, feel free to visit our professional career closet. And whether you're conducting an in-person or virtual interview, check your virtual presence on any and all social media platforms that you're using. Even if maybe you engage in very professional social media usage, if you have friends who tag you in photos that maybe aren't the most professional, asking them to remove you from those tagged photos would be very good practice to have prior to an interview. On this slide, we have different interview question styles. So we have the straightforward, tell me how your background prepares you to do this job. Behavioral-based questions such as, could you tell me about a time when you worked on a group project? Situational or hypothetical, so how would you respond to a dissatisfied customer? And technical, so what new feature would you add to Microsoft Word if you were hired? One thing that is very helpful when preparing for interview questions, if you don't know what you might be asked, is reflecting on your previous experiences and being able to provide maybe 2 to 3 real examples for each experience beforehand. I think that would be really helpful. So sitting down with your resume and thinking beyond even what is on your resume. So try to think back to when you were at that volunteer, internship, research opportunity, and reflect on, any challenges that you might have faced, any failures, working with others, just anything beyond what is on your resume, because the employer has seen your resume, they know your resume, they want to know more about you and what you've done in these experiences that will help you be successful in this new opportunity you're seeking. Doing your research prior to an interview is crucial to having a successful interview. So this goes beyond simply reviewing the position description. You also want to research the company and organization. So if they have a website or a LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn page for the company, visit that and get as much information as possible. Learn about their mission and values and goals and how those things relate to you as a person and a potential employee. Ask current or former employees about their experiences. I would recommend using LinkedIn for that as well. If you search for a company or organization, you'll be able to see people within your network who are affiliated either currently or their previous employees. So reach out to these people to get more information on what the culture is like there and how you might fit within that culture. All of these things are very helpful when preparing your questions for your interview. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this recording, it is not only an opportunity for the interviewer to get to know you, it's an opportunity for you to get to know the company and the position better. So in preparing and communicating different examples, we recommend using the STAR method. So the situation or task, which are the S and T components, are describing a specific event or situation. Be sure to give enough detail for the interviewer to understand the situation at hand. And you can use experience from campus or work opportunities, as well as any community involvement that you were a part of. Next is the action. So describe the action that you took. If, for example, you're describing a group project, focus on your role within that group. And lastly, and I would stress as probably the most important part, what did you accomplish? What did you learn? And how does this connect with the opportunity that you're interviewing for right now? And again, this is important because past actions are more indicative of future success than hypothetical situations. So it's important to try to use as many concrete examples as possible. They're a lot more effective than talking hypothetically or talking very vaguely about what you tend to do. I think using examples are a lot more effective in communicating your past actions, your past successes, and what you've learned from them. If you want to try to prepare for potential behavioral questions that you might be asked in the interview, looking at the job description is a very good tactic to adopt. You can gain a lot of hints based on what is communicated on the job description. Be aware of any keywords that the employer uses often. Those are hints that that is, a component of the job or a component or characteristic of a candidate that they're looking for. So being able to speak on those things would be to your advantage. So if possible, I would encourage you to take this time to pause the recording and try to find someone in your household or maybe reach out to somebody over the phone if you can to practice some commonly asked interview questions using the STAR method that we just reviewed. So these are the interview questions that you can practice with the individual that you've identified to help you with this exercise. So we have, tell me a time when you dealt with a challenging person, describe a time when you worked with a group to achieve a goal, walk me through a time when you made a mistake, and what would you have done differently? So again, try to use the STAR method to help you utilize examples from your previous experiences to communicate to an employer your previous experiences, skills, challenges, and how you've worked through those things to communicate how you will be a successful candidate for the position you're currently seeking. Here we have some other common questions. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So what are some of the things that make you different than others? And this question it's a very loaded question. So the key is to be organized and concise with answering it while addressing what makes you different, what brought you to this career, and why do you want to work for this organization. And with that, so with working for the particular organization or company that you've identified, focus on values that you have in common with the organization. It should be important to you. So utilize the research that you did on the company to help you in this question and let them know that you know about their achievements and challenges as well and how you can facilitate that further. With what is your greatest weakness, try to identify a genuine weakness that does not contradict a core competency needed for the job. So this is to say, don't use, like if you're going to be in public relations, maybe don't say something like, I don't like working with people, for example, or I am a bad public speaker if you know the position that you're applying for requires you to be a strong public speaker. Also, it's important to not use a weakness that is actually a strength. This is a tactic that employers are kind of tired of hearing about. So try to identify a legitimate weakness and explain maybe one or two specific ways that you have overcome or try to mitigate the weakness and provide evidence for that so that you can demonstrate to the employer that it's something that you're aware of, that you've attempted to work on and will continue to do so if you secure this position as well. As I mentioned in a previous slide, you can utilize our Standout mock interview tool to practice virtual interviews, and then you can schedule an appointment for a mock interview critique to go over your practice with your career specialist. When you arrive to your interview for an in-person setting, try to arrive early, 10 to 15 minutes, so you aren't rushed. But try not to enter the building maybe like until 5 to 10 minutes beforehand. You don't want to be too early either. Be courteous of your interviewers and understand that they might have previous engagements that they're attending to, so you don't want them to feel like they're being rushed as well. Leave your cell phone in your car or turn it off before going into an interview so that it's not a distraction or it doesn't happen to ring or go off during your interview. The interview begins in the parking lot, so from that point on, pretend that you are being watched. Be courteous to everyone that you're meeting, from the receptionist and any other professionals that you might engage with before actually meeting with the interviewers, because these are people that you could potentially be working with, and they might also be people that the interviewers might ask about or might ask for more information. So they might go to the receptionist and ask them, you know, how their first impression of you was. Bring extra copies of your resume. Have one for yourself, but also, again, be courteous and have copies prepared for your interviewer as well as the other individuals who might be interviewing you too. And take cues from the interviewer to kind of guide you through the interview process. So taking cues for when you're able to sit, if there's a glass of water or a water bottle left there, wait until the interviewer lets you know that is for you, and so on. For a virtual or phone interview, make sure that you check the Zoom or virtual link early to make sure that you have the link, the password, and your internet connection are all stable and ready to go. Again, put away any other distractions. If you're not using your cell phone for the phone interview, put it away for the virtual Zoom interview, as well as any other electronics that might be a distraction or might go off. Have a copy of your resume and cover letter either by you or in front of you, and also a glass of water in case you get dry mouth and it makes it difficult to speak for an extended period of time. You have that ready and you don't have to kind of struggle through the rest of the interview. And again, it's important to take cues from the interview with a virtual or phone interview too. Other points to be mindful of during the interview are being mindful of time. So if you feel like you are taking a lot of time answering questions, try to wrap it up as quickly as possible. It's important to be concise and organized when you're speaking as much as you possibly can for questions that you might not be prepared for. So you can communicate your experience and how it relates to the position you're seeking as effectively and concisely as you can. Make effective eye contact and try to smile, whether it's a virtual or in-person interview. You want to try to maintain that eye contact. So especially if you are on a Zoom call, one way to do this is looking at the camera and not at the image of the person on your screen. Express confidence in your abilities. So try not to think about too much about what other candidates might be bringing to the table. Think about what your strengths are, what your assets are, what makes you unique, and what would you bring to the organization. At the end of the interview, this is your time to ask the questions that you prepared beforehand based on the research that you did on the company and the position. So if there are any gaps within that research that you weren't able to cover through researching the company website or by reviewing the job description, this is your time to ask those questions. Another thing I would recommend doing is asking about next steps. So maybe even the timeline of when they expect to move on to second round interviews or to make their final decision. That way you can kind of be aware and not just wonder when and if you're going to hear back from the employer. Be sure to ask for business cards of all of the interviewers that are there so that you can follow up with them and have their contact information in order to be able to do so. At the time that you're listening to this, maybe handshakes aren't something that a lot of people are going to be comfortable with due to the pandemic, but definitely do thank each and every single one of the interviewers who interviewed you and refer to them by name and thank them for their time. And relax because you're done. Now, after the interview, be sure to send a thank you note, ideally 24 hours after the interview, but no later than a week after your interview. Be specific with what you appreciated about them in the interview, and do that with each interviewer that you had. So this is where you can show that you were really listening and you put a lot of thought and care into each of the follow-up thank you notes following the interview. So you don't want to generate like one and send that to each of the interviewers. You kind of, you can make a general thank you note and then tailor it to each specific person based on what you appreciated about them and what they shared with you during the interview. If the date that they said they would get back to you has passed, it's okay to do a follow-up. So what I would recommend is if they gave you a specific date and it's been a week since that date has passed and you haven't heard back from them, it's okay to follow up with them. Just be sure to do it in a professional and courteous manner. However, there is an exception. If the employer stated not to contact them, don't contact them in that case. If the employer has made an offer to you regarding the job that you applied for, be enthusiastic, but don't be so overly enthusiastic that you accept without finding out any information about what this offer entails. So find out these details, be sure to get them in writing, and ask the employer how much time they can give you before you have to give them your decision. It's always best to deliberate before accepting or declining the offer. If you do happen to decline the offer, do so in a positive light. Be sure not to burn any bridges and respond promptly and courteously. Definitely do not ghost the employer. Regarding salary negotiation, there are a few things to consider before even deciding if you should negotiate. First is whether you are completely entry level or not, if the job is in a field that doesn't usually allow for negotiation, and if the offer is pretty in line with the occupation, the career path that you're pursuing, and also the level of experience that you have. If you do choose to negotiate the salary being offered, maintain professionalism throughout and present an appropriate salary range for the position based on the research that you've done on Glassdoor, Salary.com, and consider the cost of living and other factors that are important to you. We also have a salary negotiation workshop and a video recording that corresponds to that workshop called What's My Worth? Salary Negotiation. So if this is a topic that you want to learn more about, I highly encourage you to either view that video recording after this one is complete, and also you could attend our workshop for salary negotiation. If you're informed that you didn't get the position that you were applying for, remain professional. Ask the employer what you could have done to make you a stronger candidate for the position that you're applying to, in addition to thanking them and expressing your appreciation for, their time throughout the application process, and also for being transparent with you. A lot of companies and employers do not inform you of their decision, and that's unfortunate. So if you do hear back from an employer, even if it isn't the result that you were hoping for, do express your appreciation and ask them for feedback. What you don't want to do is burn any bridges, so I think that asking for feedback can kind of maintain and help you to further develop the relationships that you've begun to establish through this application process. You can follow up with the employer and let them know at a later time that you worked on some of the things that they recommended as feedback for this position, and let them know that you're open to any positions that might be relevant to you given your skills and your experience. The Career Center does have an on-campus interview program that students are encouraged to participate in. Unfortunately, it's not something that is available for alum, but it is where employers interview UCR talent on campus. Typically, when we are on campus, it's done in one of the rooms at the Career Center, and there's a chance to interview for multiple internship and full-time positions. So take advantage of that when they become available, and it's applicable to. Although this recording was a long one, it definitely only kind of touches the surface on interviewing. If you have any additional questions or you want to practice interview skills, then I would recommend scheduling a drop-in or an appointment, and our information will be on the next slide.